In today's video, we're going to go through how to create a GitHub organization job in CloudBees CI. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. If you watched the previous video about creating a multi-branch job using GitHub, this is going to seem familiar. However, when we created multi-branch jobs per repository, that means that anytime a new repository is added to GitHub, we would have to create a new job. We know that creating single pipeline jobs per branch was no fun, so multi-branch made that part a little bit easier. With a GitHub organization job, we can make the pain of creating jobs for each repository go away. Let's set the stage for the tooling that we're using today. I have a CloudBees CI client controller using version 2.263.4.2. Attached to that controller is an agent with the label of Linux. I also have two repositories that we're going to be using today. The repositories that we're going to be using are Micro1 and Micro2. Now you can notice at the time of this recording, my organization has 211 repositories. In what we're doing today, I want to scope our GitHub organization job to only Micro1 and Micro2. And let's take a moment to look at both Micro1 and Micro2. Unlike previous examples, this is very simplistic. All we have in here right now is a README in Micro1 and a README in Micro2. That way we can focus on what's happening as we add and remove our Jenkins files. If in the past you've watched the GitHub multi-branch video where we set up the GitHub app, you might want to skip over a chapter and go to the next section. If you've never seen it before or it's been a while, stay with me and we'll go through how to set up our GitHub app that we're going to use for our authentication within our controller. In order to set up a GitHub app, we're going to go to our profile inside of GitHub. And under the profile, we are going to go to Settings, which is where we are. We will scroll down to Developer Settings, and then click on New GitHub App. Now, the app name that we're going to use today is CBCI-GitHub-Darren Pope. The homepage URL we're going to use is just my GitHub base domain. I'm also going to allow my controller to interact with webhooks within GitHub. In my setup today, I am using ngrok, so I have a tunnel that I can communicate from GitHub back down into my controller. So the webhook URL that I am going to use is going to be my ngrok URL. There it is. And then I add on GitHub-webhook, and I need to make sure we have a trailing slash there. So up to this point, we have named our GitHub app. We've given it a homepage URL, and we have set up a webhook. Now let's go down to repository permissions. If you have any questions or you're not able to follow along, down in the description is documentation on how to set up the GitHub app more step-by-step than what I am showing you right now. Or it gives you a different way to look at it in case you're not following the video. Hopefully the video is good enough for you. Okay, to get started here, administration is read-only. Checks is read and write. Contents is read-only. Metadata is mandatory and it's already set to read-only for us, which is what we want. Pull requests are read-only. And commit statuses, which are right here, are going to be read and write. Now, since I am going to be interacting via webhooks, I am going to go ahead and change webhooks to read and write. That way, my job can create and manage the webhooks for us. Let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit more. Organization permissions, nothing that we need to do. Everything can stay no access. User permissions, the same as organization permissions, all no access. Based on the permissions that you selected in repository permissions, causes these set of checkboxes to appear. So if for some reason you don't see a checkbox here that I'm getting ready to check, then go back up to the top and check your repository permissions and make sure you did not miss one of those. There are only a handful of events that we need to select. We are going to select check run, check suite. Where is pull request, push, and repository. So let's recap those. Check run, check suite, pull request, push, and repository. And then finally, where can this GitHub app be installed? And for today, we are only going to allow it to be installed on this account, which in my case is my Darren Pope account. Let's click on Create GitHub App. We now land on the detail page for our GitHub app. Notice the banner. Registration was successful. Thumbs up. You must generate a private key in order to install your GitHub app. So let's generate a private key. That actually just scrolled us down the detail page to the private key section. So I'm going to say generate a private key, and I am going to save this file. Okay. We now have the private key. This private key is going to be part of the credential that we use within our controller in order to authenticate with GitHub. However, this private key by itself cannot be used inside of our controller. We need to convert it to a different format. So let's go over to our shell, and it downloaded into my downloads directory. And this command that I'm getting ready to paste in is in the documentation that is referenced in the description below. So I have OpenSSL PKCS8, some extra switches, but notice at the end there's a -n. So that file is going to be our file that we just created. So CBCI GitHub Darren Pope. And then I am going to turn that into an out file. In this case, converted-GitHub app, PEM. And then we also have a no crypt flag on the end. So let's hit enter. And since there were no errors there, that means that the private key was then converted over to converted GitHub app, which is still a private key. It just needs to be in a different format in order for us to use it within the controller. Finally, before we leave our GitHub app, we need to do one more thing. Let's go back over to the app. We need to install this application into our organization or into the account. So we'll click on Install App on the left nav. You'll see the Darren Pope account or organization in your case, and I am going to click on Install. I could choose to have it available for all repositories. But in our example today, we are only working with 2 specific repositories. We are only going to be working with Micro 1 and Micro 2, which I don't think, yep, I have to type it in. Okay. And select, and then micro, come on fingers, work, micro 1. Cool, so I have micro 1 and micro 2 selected. And these two repositories using this GitHub app will have these permissions, read access and the read and write access. This goes back to the repository permissions that we just created. Let's go ahead and click on install. And that completes setting up the GitHub app within GitHub. Now that we've finished creating our GitHub app, we need to go over to our controller and create our GitHub app credential. So let's go over to the controller, manage Jenkins, credentials, global, add credentials. We're going to change the kind to GitHub app. The ID is going to be named the same as our GitHub app. You can choose to use a different name, but I use it just to be consistent. The app ID is the application ID from the GitHub app. So I'm going to go back to the app. And the app ID is right here under the about. So in my case, it's 104251. And then the key is going to be the converted key that we just ran through OpenSSL. So I'm going to cat converted GitHub PIM. I'm going to grab that and click on test connection. This is really important that you click on test connection right now, because this will tell you whether or not you're able to authenticate with GitHub or not. In my case, it was success and the remaining rate limit is 5,000. Let's go ahead and click on OK. So now we have our GitHub app credential created on our controller. Now that we have the credential created, we can go ahead and create our job. So let's click on dashboard, new item. I'm going to give it an item name the same as my account name within GitHub, which is just Darren Pope. I'm going to scroll down to GitHub Organization and click OK. Since we are using github.com, the API endpoint is https://api.github.com. If you are using GitHub Enterprise, refer to the documentation below that calls out the specific steps that you need to follow in order to correctly configure your controller in order to connect to your GitHub Enterprise server. But since I'm going against github.com, that one is correct. For credentials, I am going to select my CBCI GitHub Darren Pope. You'll notice once I selected that credential, it went and verified again. The owner is the account name within GitHub, again, Darren Pope. We're going to leave the default behaviors, but we're going to add one extra one. And the reason why we're adding this extra one is because of the decision that has been made that we're only going to look for repositories that start with the word micro. So the way we're going to do that is select Add, and you'll notice at the very top there is a repositories section. Underneath repositories, we are going to select filter by name with wildcards. Now note, there is also a filter by name with wildcards within repository. This is not the one that we want to use. We want to use the filter by name with wildcards that is underneath repositories. And for this, we want this filter to be micro star. So any repository that begins with the word micro is eligible to be picked up by this GitHub organization job. Let's click on save and see what happens. You'll see that it's going to start scanning the organization. It's ignoring a bunch of different repositories because those are not starting with micro. But then here we can see that, oh, hey, I found micro 1. Let's check branches. Well, I found main. There was no Jenkinsfile found. Remember, there are no Jenkinsfiles in our micro 1 or micro 2 repositories at the moment. And then all the other ones are ignored. This is the reason why we put the filter in. Out of the 211 repositories, I only care about 2. So in order to not put a lot of pressure on our GitHub account, in this case, I'm only looking for things that start with micro. So I'm able to ignore 199 repositories. Actually, that's not right. 209 repositories from my account because I only care about these 2. So correctly tuning what repositories you do want to pick up is a very, very important and helpful practice. All right, so let's go ahead and click on Darren Pope. Before we click on it, notice what happened though. In the breadcrumb, you see Darren Pope. Well, when we created the job, we made it all lowercase Darren Pope, no spaces. When we take a look here now, we can see that it pulled in the icon from my account. It gave it the full name. And then the folder name, the GitHub org job name, is still all lowercase, all one word, Darren Pope. Now again, you notice here that there are no repositories found. We saw that in the scan that since there were no Jenkins files in the repositories, nothing happened. So let's make a change. Before we make that change, let's review the job configuration. So we click on Configure and let's go down to Project Recognizers. Right now, the only project recognizer that we have is Jenkinsfile. So when we find a Jenkinsfile, then the job will be created. We'll come back and revisit this again after a while. So let's go ahead and create a Jenkinsfile on the main branch of our micro 1 repository. So we'll go to vi Jenkinsfile, whoops, spell it right, Jenkinsfile. Let's take a look at this real quick. Standard declarative pipeline. I have an agent of label Linux and a simple echo statement, hello from Jenkinsfile. This hello from Jenkinsfile will make sense a little bit later. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's add it and commit it and push it. Okay. So we've now pushed that up. Let's click on Darren Pope. And after a moment, we had to receive the webhook. It started now creating the multi-branch job within the GitHub organization. And there we have micro 1. And we can see that the main branch is building. And we will go ahead and click on the console log. We can see here that our output is hello from Jenkinsfile. We did not specifically add or create the micro 1 repository in the GitHub organization. We did configure the job to only look for repositories that starts with micro. So once we put the Jenkinsfile on a branch in the repository that started with micro, the webhook was received, and then the rest of the job started populating with that multi-branch job. If you notice in the breadcrumb, build number 1 on the main branch of the micro repository in the Darren Pope account. We set it up. We are following a convention. We're creating a Jenkinsfile at the root of a repository on a branch. By following the convention the way we have the job configured, right? We did have to do a configuration to begin with, but once that configuration is complete, we're able to follow a convention, and then everything just starts showing up within this organization job. Let's go back over to main. Actually, let's go up to micro 1. And what you can see here is we've got a micro 1 multi-branch job within Darren Pope. Now, let's take a moment and create a new branch off of main. So let's go back over here. We'll do just do that. Oh, hey, let's go ahead and do this. Why not? Okay, so let's do a git pull. And let's do a git checkout-b fix-123. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to push this branch up. No changes yet. We're just going to push up a new branch to the repository. And let's see what happens. Clear that while we're waiting. If we go back into micro 1, we can now see a fix-123 branch, or job that represents the branch. And here we can see that it says hello from Jenkinsfile. This is what we expect because we just did a branch off of main into the fix-123 branch. So looking at micro 1, we have main and fix-123. Let's make a change to our Jenkinsfile on fix-123. So let me go here. Let me copy a couple of other stages here. Grab that. So what we have here is a hello that will apply to all branches. We have a stage that will only apply when the branch starts with fix dash. And then we have a stage that will only apply to when the branch is a pull request, or PR uppercase dash. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's add the changes. And let's push it up. Okay. Let's go back over to our controller. Let's click on fix-123. We can see that build number 2 is pending. And if we take a look at it, we will see our hello from Jenkinsfile. We are catting out our README because that was the steps that we had for our fix dash stage. And we're skipping our PR stage because fix dash is not equal to PR dash. So right now we have our main branch created. We have our fix branch created. Now what we're ready to do is create a pull request to move the changes from fix-123 into main. So let's go and create a pull request. And in fact, it's ready here for us. So let's compare and pull request. So if we take a look at this, we can see that the only changes were the 2 stages that we added. Let's go ahead and click on Create a Pull Request. But we are not going to merge it just yet. Let's go back over to our controller. And let me refresh micro 1. Don't worry, we'll get to micro 2 in just a minute. You'll notice that we still have main and fix123, but now we have a pull request, and that is PR5. You can take a look back here, and we can see that this is number 5. If we click into PR5 and take a look at the console log, what you'll see is hello from Jenkinsfile. We skip the fix dash branch, but we do go ahead and run the this only runs for the PRs stage. So everything is working as we expect. We have our main branch, we have our fix branch, we have our pull request that is built. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and merge our pull request. So I'll click on merge and confirm merge. Now the way I have this repository set up is it automatically deletes the branches once they are merged. So let's go back over to the controller. I'll click on micro 1. And you can now see that fix-123 is obsolete, represented by the strike through. If you take a look at the pull request, you can also see that PR5 is considered obsolete. If we take a look at main and click on build number 2, we can see now the main branch, which previously only had hello from Jenkinsfile, now also has the 2 extra outputs for the fix dash stage and the PR stage. However, they're both skipped because main does not match either PR dash or fix dash. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start working with our micro 2 repository. We're going to do it a little bit differently than what we just did with micro 1. So let's go over into our repository for micro 2. Micro 2. Make sure I've got everything that I need there. I do. Let's create a Jenkins file here, but it's not going to be named Jenkinsfile. It is going to be named Jenkinsfile-M2. And you'll understand why in just a moment. You get the contents for this Jenkins file. This looks exactly like the other one. The only change is now instead of it saying hello from Jenkinsfile, it now says hello from Jenkinsfile-M2. Let's go ahead and save this. We'll add it, commit it. And let's push this up. Now, before we do the push, let's double check our organization job. Right now, we only see micro 1. Do you expect to see micro 2 show up here? What do you think? Let's see what happens. So we push it up. And at the moment, there is no micro 2. And this goes back to our configuration change. With our project recognizers, we only have a single project recognizer. We have Jenkinsfile. But on micro 2, we decided not to name our Jenkinsfile. We named our Jenkinsfile Jenkinsfile-M2. So if I want my Jenkinsfile-M2 to be picked up, I need to create a pipeline Jenkinsfile. And I am going to give it the name of Jenkinsfile-M2. Note, the order of these project recognizers is important. It is a first match ordering. As we'll see in a few moments, since I don't have a Jenkins file in my micro 2 repository, it's going to fall through that one, and then it's going to check for, hey, do you have a Jenkinsfile-M2? We will get a match on that one, and that's the Jenkins file that will be used for that repository and branch combination. Let's click on Save. Now, because I have made a change to the configuration, there will be a scan of the organization. So I click on Save. It's going to start a scan. I'm going to go ahead and go back here. And as we wait for this to scan, which should only take a few more seconds, because I have a smaller organization, we can now see that micro 2 shows up. And in fact, we also see that the main branch was picked up because of the Jenkinsfile-M2 project recognizer. So if we go ahead and scroll down into the console log, we see here that it says hello from Jenkinsfile-M2. So far, so good. For micro 1, we are using Jenkinsfile. For micro 2, we are using Jenkinsfile-M2. Now what we're going to do is we are going to put a Jenkins file into our micro 2 repository. I'm trying to confuse things a little bit. Let's see what happens. So I'm actually just going to copy Jenkinsfile-M2 into Jenkinsfile. I'm going to edit Jenkinsfile. And the only change I'm going to make is I'm going to get rid of the -M2. So this Jenkins file looks like the earlier Jenkins file that we had. Just to confirm, if I cat Jenkins file and if I cat Jenkinsfile-M2, we can see that the M2 one has M2 and Jenkins file has just Jenkins file. Let's go ahead and add our Jenkins file. And let's push that up. Now, what do you think is going to happen? If you think back to our project recognizers, the order of our recognizers are Jenkinsfile and then Jenkinsfile-M2. Which job do you think will run? It's actually sort of a trick question, because this one actually didn't run. This is the older one. Let's do a build now. So for build number 3, actually it did build. So build number 3 is Jenkinsfile-M2. Because we have not rescanned the organization, the micro 2 repository associated to the multibranch believes its Jenkins file is Jenkinsfile-M2. In order for us to pick up the new Jenkins file in the repository, we need to scan our organization in order for that new Jenkins file that is in the micro 2 repository to be picked up. So let's click on Scan Organization now. Let's go back over to micro 2 in main. And then let's click on Build Now. If we look at output 4, what we are going to see is it now says hello from Jenkinsfile. So we were able to force micro 2 to use the Jenkins file and ignore the Jenkinsfile-M2. Just to prove what is going on here one more time, let's go back up to our configuration, click on Configure, and let's order the Jenkinsfile-M2 above Jenkinsfile. So if a Jenkinsfile-M2 is found, that will be used. Otherwise, it's going to check for a Jenkins file. If that's not found, then the repository would not show up. Just like we saw until we added the Jenkinsfile-M2 to micro 2. So does it match? Yes. Okay, great. That's the one I'm going to use from now on. It doesn't match. Does this one match? Yes, great, that's the one I'm going to use. It doesn't match, then there's nothing found, so therefore there's nothing to do. Let's click on Save. Now because I clicked on Save, it's going to do another scan of the organization. We'll go back over to Micro 2, go back to Main, and we're going to run the job one more time. We'll see that build number 5 comes up. And when we look at the output of 5, we're now back to our hello from Jenkinsfile M2. But what if we have a number of repositories that need to use the same Jenkins file? We don't want to have to maintain those Jenkins files in all of these different repositories. CloudBees CI has a feature called marker files that makes this possible. So since we've been working on our Micro 2 repository, we're just going to stay there for the moment. And we're going to make a few changes here. So let's go back over to Micro 2. Let's figure out where we're at first. So we've got 2 Jenkins files. I am going to completely remove my Jenkins files. So I'm going to say git remove Jenkins file and Jenkins file M2. And I am going to create a new marker file. And I'm going to call it, actually, I don't have to put anything in it. It's just a file name. So my marker file. So now if we take a look at the repository, I have a README and I have my marker file all lowercase. So let's do our changes here. Whoops, oh, right. Okay, git commit-m updates. So we are deleting our 2 Jenkins files and we're creating a marker file. Let's push this up. Let's watch what happens here. So all of the changes occurred. Let's go back over to the root of our organization. You'll notice that Micro 2 is now obsolete because there are no Jenkins files, either a Jenkins file or a Jenkins file M2 found in Micro 2. So this is considered to be obsolete. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and scan it one more time just to force a cleanup. If I take a look now at Darren Pope, it may take just a moment. Now Micro 2 is gone. So let's configure our job to use the marker file. So what we're going to do is go back down to our project recognizers. We're going to get rid of the M2 and we are going to add a custom script. The custom script, the marker file, and all the documentation for marker files are also below the video. Marker file is my marker file. And just like with our project recognizers, this lookup is the same, or at least very similar. If I find my marker file, then I am going to run a pipeline script. And in our case, we're going to do a pipeline script from an SCM. So I'm going to say SCM get the repository URL is from a different repository that I have on GitHub. That's called Jenkinsfile Library. The script that I'm going to use is Jenkinsfile Basic. So this is a very, very simple declarative pipeline, agent label Linux, and I'm just going to do a uname A and java-version. So I'm just going to come back over here to the script path and change it from Jenkinsfile to Jenkinsfile-basic. Within that repository, I have numbers of Jenkins files. Also, if we click back on Jenkinsfile, My branch is main, so I need to modify master here to main. And then my repository URL, it is a public repository, and I just need the HTTPS version of it. Okay. I'm also going to go ahead and move pipeline Jenkinsfile to the bottom. And here's the reason why. If something is specific in my organization, in this case, marker file, if I find a my marker file in my repository, I want that to win all of the time. If I would have left it the other way, if a Jenkins file would have been put into that repository, then that would have won. So this is going to be up to you as an administrator. Do you even want to leave a Jenkinsfile project recognizer in this configuration? If so, people could create a Jenkinsfile in their repository and that job would do whatever they want. As an administrator, you may not have that flexibility to allow people to do what they want. You may need to apply security rules, other types of things from a corporate governance perspective that you cannot allow people to circumvent. So by using these marker files, and in fact, we have my marker file is going to use this Jenkinsfile basic from this repository. And in fact, let's just see what happens here. Not only am I only going to be using my marker file, I am going to delete this Jenkinsfile recognizer. So the only thing that we're looking for right now is my marker file. Once we find my marker file, which is only in micro 2, it's going to run based on the Jenkinsfile basic from the main branch from this repository. Let's click on save and see what happens. It will do a scan. Let's click back on my name here. Let's give it just a couple of seconds. Let's refresh it again. And we can see now that micro 2 is the only repository showing up. Micro 1 no longer shows up. Micro 1 still has a Jenkins file. But our organization, the way it is configured in the project recognizers, completely ignores the existence of the Jenkins file. Let's take a look at micro 2. We'll click on main. And if we take a look at the job, if you remember when we looked at it over in GitHub, it had a uname-a and a java-version. So micro 2 did exactly what we wanted. So that's it. We've taken you through the journey. Working with GitHub, you could create a pipeline. But when you started having multiple branches within a repository, you would have to set up multiple pipeline jobs to align with whatever your branch was. Therefore, multi-branch pipelines were introduced. So that way we could point a multi-branch pipeline at a GitHub repository, and as new branches appeared, disappeared, the multi-branch pipeline job was able to manage that for the repository. Today, we took it one step further. Now we are pointing at a GitHub organization or a GitHub account. And based on the repositories that we are looking for, in our case today, we were only looking for micro 1 and micro 2. More specifically, anything that started with micro. So as things changed within those repositories, the repositories would appear and disappear. Once you have the job properly configured, if you follow the convention of using a my marker file or using a Jenkins file or using a Jenkinsfile -m2, whatever it is that you've done from a project recognizer perspective, then multi-branch jobs will start appearing and disappearing from within your GitHub Organization job. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBeesDevs. If this video was helpful to you, please go ahead and leave us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on the subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there is new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.